Welcome to Mindful School Marketing, your go-to podcast for personal and professional growth.
We're school marketers, business owners, and moms passionate about connecting other school professionals with tools and strategies for success.
We love solving problems, exploring new ideas, and thinking outside the box. Let's transform your school and life starting right now. Transform your school's admissions and marketing with Inquiry Tracker, the ultimate solution for managing inquiries seamlessly. Discover how you can make your admissions process more efficient and effective with this leading solution.
Welcome to Mindful School Marketing. I'm Tara Clays.
And I'm Aubrey Bursch. Today, we're joined by Nicole McDermott. Nicole is an independent school leader, facilitator, certified leadership coach, and search consultant with 20 plus years of experience. She values choosing courage over comfort, leading with transparency and vulnerability, building a nurturing community, attending to the details, and showing up with curiosity. For 18 years, she served as head of an award-winning Northern Virginia independent school and now works with schools, connecting them to outstanding leaders as a partner with Educational Directions, an acknowledged leader in the independent school leadership search consulting field, and as a certified coach and certified Dare to Lead facilitator, trained directly by Brene Brown to facilitate curriculum based on her research and best-selling books. Welcome, Nicole. We're so happy you're here with us today.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be with you.
Yes, thank you so much. I was excited to meet you recently at an information session at the Sycamore School. It was really fun to be part of a presentation of other school professionals. And of course, as happens, we realized we know a lot of people in common, and was so excited to hear about what you do around mindfulness and leadership. So we're thrilled that you were able to join us. Can you tell us, beyond what Aubrey just shared about you, which is amazing, can you tell us something else about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So it's funny because this is my first year in a long time not being in a school, first school year. And I still really always identify as a teacher. When I was in second grade, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I always say it kind of chose me as opposed to me making that choice. And so it has always felt that teaching is my vocation, much more so than it was my occupation. And the other thing I would just share is that the school that I led in Northern Virginia, we started a mindfulness program for students. I like to say before it was trendy, before it was a buzzword, it was about 10 years ago in 2014. And we saw so many benefits to the culture and from feedback from families about how it really made a difference. So there's a lot of alignment here today, and I'm really happy to be with you.
There is a lot of alignment, and we're excited that you're here. You know, as we're thinking about, you mentioned Brene Brown, and everyone kind of knows who she is. I'd love to know more, and I know our listeners would as well, more about that Dare to Lead program that was mentioned in your bio. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes. So in 2018, Brene Brown released Dare to Lead, the book, which is right behind me. And after that book came out, following that was a curriculum that Brene and her team had developed. And it's research-based, like everything Brene Brown does is heavily research-based. She's a qualitative researcher. And the program really, so it's a tricky thing, right? Because you think it's a leadership program, Dare to Lead, and it is. And what we like to say most is that it's a courage building program. And it's based around 4 skill sets that are teachable, observable, and measurable.
That's so interesting. I'm curious, what are the 4 skill sets?
Yeah, so the 4 skill sets are also, if you're familiar with Brene Brown, this will all feel familiar. The first one is vulnerability. So kind of talking about it, understanding it, how were we raised, what messages about vulnerability did we get, and essentially kind of getting more comfortable with vulnerability. Number 2 is clarity of values. So a lot of times we think we know what our values are. And as we dig deeper and try to think about, okay, well, here's my behavior and here are my values. And I'm not sure if that's actually matching up, right? Then it's an aspirational value. And so this is a clarity of values where we can really figure out what are our practiced values and how do those show up in our behavior and in our work. And also the idea that you don't have work values and home values and church values and parent values. You have your values, and that's kind of you're showing up as your wholehearted self, and those values need to be clear. And then following that comes trust, which is kind of a big gauzy word and hard to kind of really pin down. And so there's a lot of work around operationalizing trust. What does it really mean? Again, showing up in behavior. And then the final skill set is, Brene calls it rising skills. And it's essentially, we are all going to fail. We will have missteps. There will be hard times. And how do we get back up from that? How do we persevere? How do we show resilience and continue to keep going and showing up with daring leadership?
Okay, so all this stuff, I have listened to Brene Brown, and so it's familiar to me, but I want to ask about how this applies to a school curriculum. I mean,
Yeah.
it's great as a podcast and as a book to listen to as a personal, as personal self-help, but how do you use it as a curriculum in a school?
Yeah, so that's a great question. When Dare to Lead came out, I was already several years into being very, very familiar with Brene Brown. And we had been at the school where I was, we had been working with her research and her content for several years already. Some of her main areas, the least thing that anybody wants to talk about with Brene Brown is how she's a shame researcher, right? And shame is not a subject that we really want to ever delve into or talk about. And talking about it and delving into it and understanding it helps us show up more wholeheartedly because we can kind of let go of that. So it's really interesting when you think about some of her work around shame and how, with kids in a building every day and kids in classrooms, how much language we sometimes can use that is shaming language. And, the biggest distinction with that is I made a mistake, that's kind of guilt. I am a mistake, that's shame. And so, we have to be really careful as educators in a school, what language are we using with students? Also, kids will say, I was a bad boy. I had kids in my office, I'm naughty, I'm a bad boy. And we would say, you're a good kid and you made a bad choice. And, whether or not they really understood that, and it was important to us to kind of say that, especially once we engaged in this work. And then also supporting parents, because parents think they're doing the right thing. And sometimes they're using language that it hurts and is not great. That's one piece. And then the other piece I would say is the curiosity, the empathy, the focus on trying how to have a hard conversation when, it's tricky. And a teacher and a parent, and especially in an independent school, there is a customer aspect, and we don't like to talk about that. And everyone does feel that to a degree. And so yeah, the pieces of her work really extend perfectly in my mind to a school. And we worked with, like I said, we were already working with it. And then once I was trained, we continued doing Dare to Lead content. All the teachers were trained at the time that I left, and Dare to Lead trained, which means they went through the full curriculum. And I think it did really change the culture of our school. I think we had embedded these ideas that were bigger than just educating a kid. And I think also at the school where I was, we were very focused on social emotional growth. And I think a lot of independent schools are. And so that's also the alignment is there too.
Yeah, I have so many questions going through my head, so I'm going to jump in. I'm not going to let Aubrey have a chance to talk, but I'm curious about the relationship between this program in your school and what's happening at home and how parents feel about this. You mentioned, right? I mean, I could send my child to an amazing school that's teaching them all these great things, but if when they get home and walk in the door, I'm not following through on that. So I imagine, or I would wonder, if there's a parent education component of this, how parents feel about it, how you introduced it and talk to them about it. And also, as this is a marketing podcast, this is a feature of your school that you would most likely choose to promote as something that makes your school stand out. And so you're going to maybe attract or turn away certain families as a result of that. So that's a lot of information and questions in one, but
Yeah.
I'm super energized about it.
Yeah. Well, the parent component, yeah, that's a great question. I would love to tell you that we did parent workshops and we did not. And probably that was just a function of time and COVID and a lot of things that kind of just all happened as all school leaders know, things happen. I will say that I shared a lot of Brene's content I did a weekly newsletter to families and a lot of Brene content. And the thing that I shared the most, and maybe we can add this to the show notes, but Brene has this wholehearted parenting manifesto, she calls it. And there's a really great clip of Brene and Oprah Winfrey in an interview together where Brene reads the wholehearted parenting manifesto. And the piece of it that always stood out to me that I always highlighted is when Brene says, and this is like her talking to her child, so this is like her talking about what kind of parent does she want to be. And when she says, I would like to take away your pain, and instead I'll sit with you and help you feel it. And that, being in a school for so long and being kind of front row seat to parents and students every day, I knew for sure that Brene Brown was a truth teller when I heard that. And, we pushed out that kind of content to parents a lot. And parents resonated. I mean, parents were interested. And a lot of people would tell me, oh, I got her book because you mentioned it, or I'm listening to the podcast once that came out. So yeah, I think you're right. And I would just also add a little bit going back to the mindfulness piece too, because we were a school that was also doing mindfulness, and all of these components help to really make a school unique, right? And also with the mindfulness, and I think some of the mindfulness more so because it directly affected the students. The Dare to Lead content was more showing up through the teachers, I think. With the mindfulness piece, when kids would go home, and like we had a great story about a kindergartner telling his dad, and actually his dad was the chair of our board at the time, so it made it even funnier. The child saying to the dad, you need to do a pause plus 5. Sit down and do your breathing. And pause plus 5 was a breathing exercise we did where we traced our hand. And that was a great story because the dad acknowledged he was a little bit mad, and his son picked up on that. And so then you just see it. That's where, for schools that engage in any of this kind of work, when families can really feel it, that makes a difference. You're really showing a family what the impact of your school is when you engage in some of this stuff that's beyond traditional academics.
That's fascinating. I'm, intrigued as a parent and as a marketer, and just because I'm a big fan of this work. So I'm curious, like kind of building on what Tara said about kind of marketing. I think about internal marketing, external marketing. So there's a retention factor. So like, what are some key outcomes or benefits that you've seen, and how have those worked to perhaps help with retention, both of your students, your faculty, your staff, and of your parents? Because we know, it's easier to retain students than it is to get more students in the door. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. And staff too, right? Easier
Yes,
to keep
of
a
course.
teacher than hire a new one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let me speak to the teacher retention piece first, teacher and staff retention piece first. So I think particularly at this moment in time that we're in, coming out of the pandemic, teacher shortages, teachers not always being treated well, you hear, this is just media stuff that you hear, right? The Dare to Lead curriculum is a professional development opportunity that invests as much in the school and the community as it does in the individual teacher or staff member. And that's unique. I think that's not every professional development program would be able to bring about as much personal change as it would bring about professional change. And, I just saw something recently on Instagram from The Regulated Teacher, great follow for any educators listening. And it said, teacher well-being matters for learning. And when I saw that, I thought about the Dare to Lead stuff right away. And I thought that, again, the alignment, that it supporting teachers means giving them more than just textbooks, just training about how to teach Singapore math or whatever it is. That is all important and it's needed. And let's invest in them as people just as much as schools are saying we want to invest in children as people. And then to the point about retention of families, I think that the Dare to Lead work really supports a collaborative school environment. Part of the training is helping people have hard conversations, and there's a lot of curiosity starters that are provided, right? Help me understand, walk me through, the story I'm making up is this, tell me what you're seeing, and these are all ways that teachers can strengthen and administrators can strengthen their relationships with families so that it's truly collaborative and everybody feels like you're moving in the same direction, you're on the same team. And I think that's invaluable to keeping families and students in place in an independent school.
Thank you. Such great information. I'm going to come back to the marketing question because we do talk about marketing and I mentioned it earlier. So I am wondering, not just for Dare to Lead, but for your leadership and the mindfulness and things like that. How is marketing related to that, right? You say that it does make your school unique, but how much do you lean into that when you are in an independent school that's doing that? How do you do it so that it doesn't seem maybe too woo-woo or something for prospective families? Is there a balance in that? Did you find something that really worked for you in your school when you were doing that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And yeah, it's so funny you say that about woo woo, because I feel like so much of marketing in independent school is talking about it like it's magic and hoping that people see that too. I remember talking to families and just thinking, these people must think I'm in another planet. And I know what I'm saying is true because I've seen it. Yeah. So I think it's a couple of things there. I think there's marketing efforts that can be done kind of on a rolling, consistent basis. As one small example, we had, the school where I was at the time, we had a very active Facebook and Instagram presence. And we created an album on our Facebook page that was professional development, for example, last year, professional development 22-23 school year. And every time we did a professional development session, whether it was Dare to Lead or something else, we would post about it and we would share that. And so, that's something the current families were seeing. And they're like, okay, great. I like to see our teachers are learning. I like to know that these days that the kids are not in school, the teachers are doing something that matters, right? And that's also there for prospective families, because we certainly know prospective families go to social media. So I think that's a very small, low level thing. I would say also in terms of the Dare to Lead and mindfulness really as well, I think it's more about, if you go through this training, what kind of a leader are you showing up as? And then how is that helping you to promote your school? So I think it's a little bit of indirect connection there. If you go through the Dare to Lead program, say, use that as an example, and you're suddenly showing up with more curiosity and more empathy, and you are comfortable with vulnerability. I mean, there's so much vulnerability in a school every single day. So you really have to be, I think, when you work in a school. I think that makes your school a more appealing place, right? And that also allows you to connect better with everybody who's at that school. And perhaps those people feel more trust in you, and they feel safer to be part of the community. And so I think there's those kinds of benefits as well. And it also, just as a plug for the full Dare to Lead training, when you get the full training with the full curriculum, you do get a badge on your LinkedIn that you can say, now I'm Dare to Lead trained. And so it is something you can say, our staff, our faculty and staff, or our admin team, all Dare to Lead trained. And that can, flow from there. If people know what that means, they'll ask, and it will mean a lot to them. And if they don't, you can find ways to plug it in and little pieces of it.
Thanks so much. This is really exciting to talk about. I'm curious, all this has to do with many different things, but I'm thinking about leadership in particular. Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at our school leaders who are facing many challenges, what are the biggest challenges for them in terms of being a good leader, because they're the challenges they're facing every day. And then there's the challenge of being a leader. And where does leadership fit into the rest of the school administration's responsibilities?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question, because I as I reflect on that, I think about just what comes up right away. I mean, I've said it a few times, showing up with curiosity, really listening to people, making decisions based in integrity and with courage, maintaining boundaries, right? These are things that we're doing all the time. And I would say that those are some of the skills of a daring leader. And then when I think about, okay, what are the actual things that a school leader is doing every day, right? You're having a hard conversation with a parent, you're redirecting a child, you're collaborating with a teacher, trying to help them grow. To me, all of this is intrinsically linked. If you want to be a leader, a daring leader, and somebody who leads with integrity, then when you have a parent meeting, you are going to try to practice some of these skills where you're going to show up with more curiosity than more assumptions. If you're in the middle of a capital campaign and you're trying to figure out, who's going to be the ask, I mean, there's so much courage that's required to do that. And it just goes on, and another tenet of the Dare to Lead curriculum is clear is kind. so many applications of that in a school, right? Report cards, parent conferences, meetings, not just with parents, also administrators with teachers. And then you think about all the communication that a school leader has to put out to their constituents. So for me, it's completely intertwined. There's no separation. I will say though, to your point, because I think I don't know that everybody thinks of it quite like I do. I acknowledge that. And the Dare to Lead work is so powerful, and it's most powerful when you can continue to keep it in the forefront. So when a school goes through it together, or an admin team does it together, and you have those touch points where you can keep talking about it and you can pull some of the language, because there's shared language after you experience it together. There's so many benefits to that as well.
Wow, I think we could do a whole episode on clear is kind. Oh my gosh, so many ways that fits in. Yeah, I might also like to share that with my husband, but
It's investing in you as a person.
yes, exactly. Well, on the topic of Brene Brown, as we mentioned before we started recording, we've been inspired by Brene when we started our podcast. And so we have rapid fire questions, just like she does on her show.
Yeah.
And so we're going to move into those now. And we're going to start with the first one, which I always say is my favorite one, because we have a Goodreads list that is just full of amazing books. If anybody's looking for a good book to read and you're stuck, check out our Goodreads list. A little plug for that. It's on our website. You can find it there. But the question for you is, if you could put one book as mandatory reading in the high school curriculum, what would it be?
So I'm going to stay on brand, and I'm going to say a Brene Brown book. The Gifts of Imperfection is the one I would choose. I am a big supporter of anything that, even for a young child and a young adult in high school, that helps a student develop a strong sense of self. Anything that we can do to keep working on that, I think, is so important. So I think that book helps to do that. It's 10 guideposts for wholehearted living.
Thank you so much. That's a great one. What is one app you couldn't live without?
Definitely Insight Timer, which is a meditation app. I use it every day to meditate in the morning, and I usually fall asleep with it as well. It's free. And what I like best about it too is that it tracks my number of days of meditation. So today was 2,559.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That is amazing. Wow.
Yeah,
How many
definitely
years
something to
is that?
celebrate.
I'm not a
Wow.
math person, so I'd have
Yeah.
to figure that out later. But
Is that the number of meditations or the number of days that you've meditated?
number of days.
Wow. Oh my
Nice.
gosh. Wow. Congrats.
Thank
That
you.
is
Okay.
awesome.
What are you reading right now?
Right now, I've got the other one right here, Build the Life You Want by Arthur C. Brooks and Oprah.
Oh, yeah.
He's a happiness researcher. It's
Mhm.
interesting. I've had this book sitting around for a long time, and finally last week I said, okay, I got to start it. It's good.
Great.
I have not
All
heard
right.
that one. That should be a fun one to add to my list and our Goodreads list. What is one great piece of advice you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think it's so hard, one piece of advice. And I think what I would say is meeting people where they are makes such a huge difference as you try to build connections and for people to be seen. And I think when you can meet people where they are, whether it's a young person, a person your same age, somebody older than you, I think it creates a space that's very conducive for courage, for creativity, for productivity, and for accomplishment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been great. I am very inspired. I appreciate all that you've shared. Where can people find you online, Nicole?
Yeah, you can find me at NicoleMcDermott.net, also or on the Educational Directions website, and on LinkedIn as well.
Great.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for being a part of our show and sharing all this great info with our listeners.
This episode is brought to you by Enquiry Tracker. We believe that every inquiry is an opportunity, and with Enquiry Tracker, you can unlock the full potential of your school's enrollment journey.
Say goodbye to missed opportunities and hello to a streamlined admissions process that prioritizes efficiency and effectiveness. Discover the leading solution for school admissions and marketing. Visit inquirytracker.net to book a personalized demo today. That's inquiry with an E, tracker.net.
Thanks for joining us on the Mindful School Marketing Podcast.
We'd love it if you pop into iTunes and leave a review, 5-star preferred. Let us know how you like the show. It helps us improve what we're doing and helps others find us too.